Previously on Lost.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that's even in the very distant future. But when there's always that option, it's like a dark cloud, like forever on the horizon.
WWE, excuse me. WWE has also.
What, Matt? What the fuck?
This is going to be the worst show we've ever done.
I'm sorry.
Do we have the way to just mute Matt's audio?
I'd like to say I'm sorry, but I'm making soup right now.
With a mallet. You're making soup with a mallet.
I won't make any more bit banging noise, I swear.
He swears. All right, Matt Attack. Can I adjust his volume from here? I don't think I can. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I can't believe this. Can you believe it? We're back. The Blade Job. This is episode 91. It only took us over a year between episodes, because that's what I do. But thank you all for joining us. Of course, I've got a cacophony of interesting characters with me today, starting with the host of the MGB Wrestling podcast, Graham. I mean, you're not really. You're the co-host.
Co-host. I think my son would be very offended if he thought I was the host.
It's true.
But yeah. So the two people below me right now are not very good at math, so I kind of worked it out. I think that means then you're going to be your 100th episode in 2030. Is that right? I think that's right.
Yeah,
if you keep
somewhere
going
around
at the
there.
same rate. Keep going at the same rate.
Should be about that. But also joining, hard with pointing, the Podfather himself.
Kablam.
Mags, how are you, sir?
Yes, I'm doing well. So 91 episodes. I have started a podcast and ended that podcast before you got to 91, and that ended on 93 episodes.
Yeah.
You're slacking. You're slacking.
Am. And last, but of course not least, after his lifetime ban, I talked to the Blade Job Executive Committee, and they offered to lift the ban, making his triumphant return to the Blade Job, Matt Tidy Whitey Willis himself. And this is why we can't have anything. If you are not familiar with Soupgate, go back. It was an episode where, unfortunately, instead of canceling his appearance, Matt decided to work during his appearance.
Exactly. When Scott's great as thought.
And of course,
I was
Graham's
going to
video.
save this for later, but I think the joke's already been done now. So
This is all true. I'm happy that you're all here. I'm happy that we are doing my yearly episode. Hopefully, it's still 2021 when this comes out. Fingers crossed. It's been a rough year. It's been a rough 2 years, I think, for all of us. Most of us have stayed busy in the podcasting world. I have not. I've decided to just escape and hide under a rock. But we're back. We're together. And first, it's Christmas time. Hopefully. Hopefully you're watching this and it's Christmas time. And
this is coming out in video format as well. I thought this was just audio.
No.
No.
That's why I said.
Clothes on.
Matt's wearing pants.
I thought you said YouTube was the backup. I didn't realize it was the real thing. Oh, okay.
It is. If you remember episode 90, it was video.
Yeah, I watched it.
I probably listened to audio.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll have an audio version of this as well. But I guess you don't really need to listen to it because you're part of it. So You're the only Graham. You are the only person I went out of my way to make sure there was always video or audio only available to.
Wow.
Other than that, you know,
Me,
I just
I listen to all the podcasts that I'm a part of on
Do you?
audio version.
I
Yeah.
do as well.
oh, I
Ego.
listen. I only usually
Views,
listen to
views,
them
and
because
listens. That's
Yeah.
why.
I usually only do it when I appear on someone's show because I know they have to cut out 90% of my nonsense.
And,
So I
and
want
you
to see what's
to know
left.
what's left.
Yeah. So
Half of the shows I do nowadays are live. I can't cut it out.
that's true. And that's what I was going to do, but I also couldn't, I couldn't. I just couldn't. So the first thing that I want us to do as a family Christmas gathering, we don't have the cooked goose. We don't have those weird things that you pull and they pop and you get the paper
Crackers?
crowns. Those are actually crackers. Okay, I didn't know what a Christmas cracker was. So we are going to share our memories, our first memories of independent professional wrestling. And I'm probably going to cut in some cheesy Christmas music to be playing over this. Bells and stuff. You know what I'm sorry. So we are going to start with Graham.
I think, Matt, we actually kind of talked about it on the aforementioned Cracker recently. MGB started out as a WWE podcast, or that was the idea that I was presented to. And actually, our first episode wasn't WWE. Our first episode was Nova Pro. We decided, hey, we enjoyed doing this. We enjoy going so much. We really want to talk about this more than anything else. And that's what it was. It was around September. We'd just gone back to school, September 2017. And actually, it wasn't supposed to be the first event. We were supposed to have gone to an event much earlier in the year. I want to say around February. I think it was supposed to be MCW, Maryland Championship Wrestling, I believe, but I'm not sure. I think the Hardy Boys might have been there, or it might have been somebody like that. There was like some really big names, and there was a few little behavior issues. So I was like, no, I'm not. I never mentioned it to him, and yeah, we didn't end up going, and we had some good behavior once we went back to school, and I was like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to go and see this indie show. I had no idea anybody on the card. I don't even know if they announced who was going to be on the card. I was just like, oh, it's 30 minutes away. Let's go see what it's all about. And walked in, small like community center, pretty much like most indie events are now, but I didn't know what to expect at all, having been to WWE events. And they'd already started before we even got in there. Like, I think doors opened at like 7 and it started at 8. And yeah, we got there like 7:05 and there's already wrestling going on. So it was like super confusing on what's going on. We found out afterwards that for Nova Pro, they always do like a pre-show. They don't put it out live on IWTV or anything, or it never makes the cut. So if you're not there, you miss those matches. So we found that out afterwards, and we always used to get there on time for that. And first experience was we got to the seats. We saw the tables around the outside as well. I was like, oh, okay. Now the merch table I'm well familiar with, but I had no idea at that point. And I remember walking around looking like, don't really know who these people are. But like the second table we got to, I was like, oh shit, that's Sanjay Dutt. Like, I know who Sanjay Dutt is. Like, we've been watching Impact, WWE. Those were kind of our things at that time. And we carried on by, and I was like a middle schooler. I said to Mason, I was like, oh my God, like, did you see who that was? He's like, I know who it was. It was like Sanjay. So we carried on walking like we hadn't noticed him. And it was like, oh my God, we've got to go talk to Sanjay Dutt. Because I think he was one of the title holders at that point. And we walked back, really nice guy. He had a kid around Mason's age. We chatted a little bit about family. We talked a little bit about wrestling. In fact, we loved him on Impact, blah, blah, blah. Bought a shirt for Mason that was way too big for him. They don't have kid sizes at any of these shows. So he had like a small adults. He wore that. And we're like, wow, this is going to be amazing. Sanjay Dutt's it. And I would have been quite happy with that experience. I would have wanted to go back afterwards. And just to cut this fairly short then, some of the people we saw on that first show who really resonated with us and have still stuck with us, the Ugly Ducklings, who I'd never heard of at all, just made an instant impact with me straight away. And we became, we followed, they kind of got us onto other places as well. We went to our second event, which was actually in a different state because we saw the Ugly Ducklings were on the card. Also Tim Donst as well. Safety first, Tim Donst. That was all. We had no idea that he was a deathmatch fighter at all. We only knew him as a comedy guy, and that was another person that we went back to see. And actually, Mason dressed up like him for the second show, which was a Halloween show. And Tim Donst actually came after the intermission. He said, "I'm really sorry." He said, "I didn't see you. I want to give you a T-shirt." I was like, "Oh, like." Wrestlers don't need to do things like that, but when you do something like that, that really sticks with you. That really made that boy's night that time. That somebody had gone out of his way to acknowledge him, talk to him, take a picture with him, all those sorts of things. And the first one, when you said what my experiences, the thing I'd forgotten and I had to go back and look at, that very first match I actually talked about, it was Donovan Danhausen. He was not Danhausen at that point. It didn't mean anything to me at that point, but I did not remember that at all. It was when I went back and looked at the card to see who was on there, and Danhausen was actually in the first match that I ever saw. But
and that was like
paint, of course.
That was just pre the character Danhausen.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Which I thought was really cool afterwards. I have seen him live since, and another person who's just really cool. But yeah, the thing that stuck with us more than anything else was you don't even need to know who these people are. Like, it doesn't need to be like the big star that you see on WWE. There's so much character. There's so much talent. Just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean that there's no talent there. And just the proximity to the ring was the thing that really stuck with us. Like, I didn't get front row seats because I was being a cheapskate. I think it was general admission, which was, I didn't know what that meant at the time. It's second, third, fourth row. That's just, you're so close. The interaction with the wrestlers. It was awesome. And we've obviously been going ever since, and that's why MGB still keeps running. We keep going to those shows, and we keep doing our reviews.
It was nice. That's the cool thing about the indie shows is you never know who you're going to discover. You never know. You see someone, and then a year later, 2 years later, you're watching, Ring of Honor or another indie show or whatever, and this person's big now. And you're just like, oh, I remember that guy. That's really fantastic, and it's cool that Mason was so involved and so into it. Whereas he could have shown up and been like, oh, it's not. Where's the Titantron? Where's the pyro? Where's the extravaganza? But the fact that he was really kind of into it and he dug it. That's really cool. Thank you, Graham.
He got to meet the wrestlers. That was the thing. You don't get to do that at a WWE show. The fact you can talk to the wrestlers, you can give them a high five, you can get a picture with them. That's the experience of indies that I love and still do to this day.
You do if you pay for like the $700 ticket.
Yes, that's true.
I've had a couple where it's like, oh yeah, no, for an extra, you bought your ticket for $60. For an extra $300, you get a meet and greet with Seth Rollins, and I'm like, no. I'll wait till he.
And now it's a virtual meet and greet. You get to speak to Seth over Zoom.
Oh yeah, for $500. No, thank you. All right, who's next, Mags or Matt?
I mean, I'm happy to go next. My first kind of real memories of going to see wrestling live and nowhere near as exciting as Graham's, but mine were from, and I don't know if this is just a kind of a British thing or if it translates over to your guys' side of the pond, but we have places called holiday camps where you go caravanning, I suppose, for a want of a better word. But they would have like entertainment on at nights. Usually, it'll be fairly early on in the nights to entertain the kids, and then once the kids like went off to bed, it'd be like a rowdy kind of party for the adults. But yeah, one of my real first experience of watching live wrestling was at these holiday camps where you would have a lot of unknown wrestlers, a lot of wrestlers who were trying to break into the scene, but you'd also have like the homage wrestlers like a fake Undertaker, or there was two guys pretending to be the Road Warriors, that kind of thing. But yeah, I was already at that age like hooked into wrestling through my gran. So going to see it live, it was just absolutely mind blowing. So yeah, that was my kind of like early experiences, and it wasn't till maybe I was into my mid-late teens that I started seeing wrestling shows that weren't holiday camp shows, and a kind of traveling group came to my town. Again, I don't think it's like in the States where you have almost like mini territories, don't you, where a wrestling company will be based in one little area. Here, the companies will travel like a wide circle of places. So this company, and I can't remember for the life of me what the name of the company were, but they came in again. It was kind of a lot of wrestlers trying to make it in the business. No real names that I personally knew of at the time. But it's only years after that I found out that I'd actually watched Jody Flesh and Johnny Storm tag teaming whilst they were basically breaking into the scene, which was pretty cool. Then after that, I kind of, as you know, I fell out of wrestling for a while. Didn't really kind of enjoy it or watch a lot of it. And since I kind of like got dragged back in, it's just a time thing. It's just not having the time to be able to travel to a lot of shows. And then COVID has been a bit of a bitch for the last 2 years. So everything, I mean, we've just literally gone into plan B lockdown again. So it's very likely any shows will be cancelled again. So yeah, but yeah, that's my that's the genesis, I suppose, of my indie wrestling fandom, I suppose.
And that's what sucks. That's what really sucks about right now is, so many indie promotions didn't survive the first lockdown. Of both in the U.S. and abroad, everywhere. And now we're reaching this point again where how many other promotions are going to go under just because they can't survive. Not everyone has an IWTV deal, not everyone has a Fight TV deal, not everyone has another company who's helping them out. But that's cool. And that I like that story, Max. Thank you. Like, it reminds me kind of that's actually really familiar to the old school version of wrestling in the US. If anyone watched the Young Rock, The Rock's biographical TV show, going to see his dad wrestle at a flea market. That's what we see around here a lot. Is we see flea markets and just like carnivals and stuff where it's just it's easy to set up a ring in a field and just wrestle.
Yeah. Well, essentially these rings are set up in the holocamps on the dance floor, essentially right next to a stage. So it's as ghetto as you can ever find it, basically. And then you'll have all the kids all kind of like in the seats or surrounding the ring, and then you have all the alcoholic parents all sat at the back as close to the bar as possible. But yeah, it's mesmerizing when you first go to a wrestling show and you see even the most basic of wrestling moves. It looks so technically skilled. It's it's mind blowing at that age. Now I think it's very rudimentary, but back then, it blew me away.
No, for sure.
Can I just add one thing about the holiday thing? Last couple of times we've been to England, we've been to holiday camps like you've been talking about. And actually the last time there was no wrestling, which we were a little disappointed about. But when we came back, one of the wrestlers we were researching for MGB, it just happened it came up on Cage Match. It actually listed they appeared in Skegness. And it said,
wow.
It was actually at the Butlins there. So when we look back, so you can obviously click on the card as well and you can look. And for some of those, they actually had, WWE did a tour and they went to, I think it was a Skegness location. I want to say it was 2011. So some of those names, when you actually go back, obviously we have Cage Match now. Like if I want to go back and find matches, you can find them. And some of those names obviously were much bigger than you thought. Obviously, when you first went there, you don't have access to those names. And obviously they didn't resonate with you because they weren't famous at that time. But it's kind of a shame like you don't have like a promo picture or something. Because I'm going to guess there probably was people on that card who did become famous. It's just the names didn't mean anything to you at that time.
Yeah,
but WWE went through Skegness. And you can see the pictures. We're not just talking like your mid-carders. We're talking people like Angle was there, Undertaker was there. There was a lot of people who were there.
Wow,
and
must have been doing terrible business to go to Skegness.
Awesome. At Skegness as well. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
They did Minehead as well. Butler's Minehead. My stepbrother used to work there, and he got to see all the big names going through at a time.
Unfortunately, when I was a kid, we weren't classy enough for Butlins. It was Pontins, which is like the kind of dollar store version of Butlins.
I used to go to Pontins as a kid, and I will not have it knocked at all. It was a great time.
It is, yeah. I mean, I rag on it now because I think I'm better than that. But yeah, I can't remember having a bad time at a holiday camp. It was always fun.
It's funny because I don't really know 90% of the fucking words you're saying.
I was going to ask, don't you have the I know we have them in Maryland and I know we have them in Virginia. Don't you have the Yogi Bear campground sites in
Yeah, they're here and there.
that would be the closest I could think of. I was trying to think of an
Okay.
equivalent for you. Like they'll have something on in the evenings.
So
Like they'll have a different event.
imagine a trailer park, but
Yep.
huge, like with thousands and thousands of trailers, and then the centerpiece of the trailer park is an entertainment center that has a pool at one side and then a bar at the other side and arcade machines sat in the middle. That's pretty much
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
I kind of we have some similar things to those around here that are I mean kind of going to the wayside. You know, they're not as popular as they used to be, but my grandmother years and years and years ago pretty much lived at an RV park, and they had some amenities at the park, and they were also close by to a concert venue that was on the same lake. So I kind of get what you're saying.
With lockdown being as it is in Britain, they have become massively popular again, like crazy popular and crazy expensive as well.
Yeah, they're cleaning up, absolutely cleaning up, because people aren't going abroad.
And they want to go on holiday.
Yeah, so you just want to go somewhere. You just want to leave the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Which a great thing to do when you leave the house is to go see some live pro wrestling.
Indeed.
Hey, Matt, tell me more about maybe your first independent experience.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm just going to quickly tack on slightly to Mag, because he mentioned about seeing Johnny Storm breaking in. The last event I went to had Johnny Storm on, which I thought was kind of cool.
That's a great link.
Indeed.
Segue.
You also you're talking about Butlins. I'm actually where my apartment is now is actually in the car park. Well, where was the car park for Butlins in Clacton, and across the road is where it used to be, literally. And on that card, and I actually had to refer to my notes here. Abba Ginsworth versus Roy St. Clair in 1961. It closed in 83, in fairness. It closed in 83, in fairness, but it's still a thing. But my first wrestling event I went to was actually for LGN Wrestling, which is a touring company in the UK. I don't know if it's the same one or not that Max was referring to or not. And it was at the local town hall. And because it was the biggest venue to actually have one in the area. They often come down like 5 or 6 times a year. The first one I went to was with my surrogate nephew Ben, and we were front row. It was only 15 quid, so that's fine. 15 quid. I sat front row. We saw it was meant to be a Royal Rumble, but as the opener, but it turned out that they were all who's going to come in first. We're all going all in the first time. So so you screwed a Royal Rumble with something a Battle Royal. Okay, so I was not impressed at that point. I was not impressed. Anyway, so that was all. It was all fun and games, and then get to the main, and then the last two ended up going to fight for a chance to face the LDN champion at the next event to come to Clacton. There was other matches throughout the card, and they were all very good. It was all very fun. It was wonderful. It was a good fun thing. What stands out to me is who came in to make the save in the main event. The homicidal, genocidal, suicidal, death-defying Sabu.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a crazy name to show up at a random indie show across an ocean.
Indeed. This would have been 2014? 2014 was the first indie show I actually went to be fair. Mainly because it's just it was always on a night where I had something on. But I wanted to go to this one. It was fine. They announced Sabu ahead of time because obviously
he was the draw, clearly the draw.
It was. Tickets were 15 quid. If you want a meet and greet, 200 quid.
Oh my god!
Oh,
ouch!
But you got a Q&A with him.
To meet Sabu.
You got Q&A. You got 10 pictures all signed.
I
10
mean,
pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want 10 pictures? Why wouldn't
10
you just
different
charge
pictures.
All
$20
in
and give
different
one
poses.
20 quid and charge get
Right.
one picture? That makes no sense.
oh, like it was 200, but you got to meet and greet everyone,
Right?
right?
Just taboo. Just taboo.
And then get 10 pictures. I hope they were all the same picture as well. Just literally the same.
No,
eight,
didn't
eight
have
by
it.
10.
Didn't have it.
Pre-signed, and he just pulled them out of a pile and said, "Here you go, get the fuck out."
The person who won though, I remember who won the main event, and it was a guy called Jigsaw.
Ooh.
You may Jigsaw. He was a very, very good masked wrestler. He was very much. He was well loved. We've had, from LGN have had David Hart Smith's gone through them. Regal's been involved in the past. A lot of British wrestlers go through, and Paige at one point wrestled for them as well. In fact, their alumni is amazing.
No, that sounds like it's a nice. It's nice to hear of an indie promotion in one country who's willing to bring in a lot of talent from another country.
Indeed. I mean, CXW, who I went to, LGN and CXW, the only ones in the UK I've been to. Everything else has all been America that I've done indie shows. Graham knows all the ones I went to now, of course.
Matt, I'd have to look it up, but I have a feeling that Jigsaw might have been at Chikara, which was our first one that we went to. I'm not 100% sure, but I have a feeling that he might have been on that card. Because as soon as you said Jigsaw, I was like, I recognize that name.
He may have been. He may have been.
Yep.
I was what's my thought now? Damn it.
It's all good. It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On Jigsaw's Wikipedia, yeah, he started in Chikara. Went through CZW, Ring of Honor, Dragon Gate.
It may not have been the same. It may not have been the same Jigsaw.
That's true.
I mean, was he a big enough name to have a homage wrestler?
And in 2014, unlikely.
So
I think he was already in TNA at that point.
Yeah, it says that he has worked in the UK where he wrestled for Hope Wrestling. So I think it's probably the same guy.
He could have done.
Yeah, and TNA too. They had a really big relationship with a lot of British promotions. There was a lot of crossover. Yeah. So
it was one of their biggest markets.
Yeah,
it was. CXW did a great job of bringing in some big names. The UK Pitbulls they brought in, legendary British tag team, of course. So saying, and Ben for their first promotion, they got into some pretty big names. You don't know who's going to turn up to an indie show. As Grado's first time when he met the Man Beast.
Yeah, you never, and that's a thing that I feel like a lot of people. We'll get to that in a second. We'll get there. Matt, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. This is my gift right now, is hearing your stories. And now I'm going to tell you mine, and I'm going to do something different than I usually do. I'm not going to rant for 40 minutes.
Oh, well, that's an absolute shame.
I know.
I'm disappointed.
Don't worry.
The Blade Job show that I remember.
We'll get there.
You've definitely matured in this.
I say that now.
It's a shell of its former self.
Let's see what happens when I start speaking, though. So, I was kind of like I was just like one of you. I liked wrestling. It was a thing that I enjoyed. I more fit into Mags's story. I was young. My dad liked wrestling, so that's who I watched wrestling with. And I was, I loved WCW and I loved ECW and I loved WWF. But I didn't know there was something that wasn't them. I had no idea what the indies were. I was young when I went to my first indie show. I want to say, I don't think I'd ever been to an actual I think indie was my first. I could be wrong because I did go to a WCW Nitro at some point. I think in '99, I want to say.
Oh, the rough end.
No, it was still good. It was pre the logo change.
The exploding vagina.
Yeah, it was right at that tail end. It was that era when it was like Sandman had just come in as Hack. Goldberg was still kind of it was right after Rey Mysterio unmasked.
Okay.
It had just happened like weeks before that. So my dad was in the National Guard, and he wanted to take me to a wrestling show at the Lincoln Armory, which was actually his office was in the building. Because he was fairly high ranking in the National Guard. So he had his own, office. He was a commissioned officer. And so he's like, I'm taking you to a wrestling show. And I was all excited. And we show up, and kind of what I expected Mason to feel like. I was like, okay, it's just a ring with some chairs around it. Like, I don't know what's going on. But there were some big names. Spike Dudley was there. April Hunter, if we remember her, she was the redheaded Nitro girl back in the 90s.
Okay.
She was one of the dancers. She became a wrestler afterwards. And actually, Aaron Stevens wrestled, the artist formerly known as Damian Sandow.
You're welcome.
I had no idea who he was, but he actually grew up the town over from me. And he's
Wow.
only a couple years older than me, so he must have been like 18. He must have been fresh out of wrestling school at this point. But the promotion was Chaotic Wrestling, which it wasn't owned by the same person at the time, but it was closely connected to Killer Kowalski's school, the school that trained Triple H and Kofi Kingston and 1,000 other wrestlers, Cena. But my memory of it is once, just like you, being so close up and being so you're part of the show at that point. You're the wrestlers' interaction, because I went to a WCW show, like I said, and eventually went to WWF shows, and the wrestlers don't give a shit about you. When they talk to the crowd, they're not talking to you. They're talking to the crowd. And I just thought that was so cool, like being able to meet these people and interact with them and see them live. But my biggest memory is the ring announcer saying, okay, it's time for our main event. And I was all excited. And the ring crew showed up and started taking down the ring. And I'm like, what the hell? Where's the main event? And they were taking down the ropes, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, you said you had one more match. And then they brought out spools of barbed wire.
Oh.
And I went, what is happening?
What is this madness?
They start stringing up barbed wire for the ropes, and I'm going, hold on. So I call the guy over. I'm like, come on, that's not real. He cuts a piece off, and he hands it to me and says, feel real to you? And I touch it. I'm like, holy shit, that's real barbed wire. And I'd seen deathmatch wrestling. I'd seen Japanese tapes and stuff like that. But I'm like, hold on. What's the main event? He goes, oh, it's a King of the Deathmatch tournament. And I'm like, okay. I still have that barbed wire. It's at my dad's house. It's in a little container.
Oh, that's cool.
That's
what
so awesome.
transpired? I mean, we're talking barbed wire ropes, flaming tables, fire bombs, thumbtacks. Just, I had never, ever seen anything like it, especially in person. Because I'd seen FMW stuff. They had the barbed wire ropes, but they weren't doing thumbtacks. They weren't doing stuff like that. I wasn't overly familiar with like the other Japanese deathmatch style wrestling, and I had seen ECW, so I'd seen barbed wire matches there, but seeing it live and in person, that changes you. That,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it went out of style in the 2000s, especially when WWE went PG. A lot of other promotions went PG too, because that was the fan base they were looking for. So my first barbed wire match was in probably 2000, and my next barbed wire match wasn't until 2018, 29. David Starr versus Joey Janela. That was the next barbed wire match I saw. So, but the experience, like the first time I saw it was amazing. The second time was even better because I got to bring people and I got to say, what you're about to see is really fucked up. It's really, I have, not to see the rant's coming. I have this vivid memory of David Starr pulling away from the barbed wire and his back staying with it, like popping. And to this day, I mean, granted, David Starr is no longer an active professional wrestler because David Starr is kind of a trash human being. But to this day, when I saw him wrestle for the next couple of years, there's this big scar on his back, and I know the moment in his life that he got that scar.
Wow.
It's just from that day forward, I didn't go to another independent show for a long time. Mag's kind of like you. I kind of fell out of love of wrestling. That post Monday Night War, going into the Ruthless Aggression era, like I kind of lost interest in the whole thing, and I didn't come back until around 2008, 2009.
The Kelly era.
For me, it was I had seen a lot of, because YouTube was out by this point, and I'd seen this young kid in Ring of Honor named CM Punk. And then I heard that he had signed with WWE.
So you call that the summer of Punk. Matt calls it the winter of Kelly.
Yep.
Please tell us more about CM Punk. I know Matt's dying to hear this.
So Kelly started as an exhibitionist. And who was it? Chris Masters didn't want her to take her clothes off.
Mike Knox,
thank you. And we, as teenage boys, late teenage, early 20 boys, mid 20s. I don't even know what it was at this point. It would have been mid 20s at this point. I graduated much earlier than this. Maybe late 20s. We wanted to see what was underneath the towel. And it never happened.
No, we didn't.
Maybe not you, but
I mean, to be fair, you wanted to see what was under Val Venus's towel. That's why.
Hello, Matt. But the CM Punk kid was really interesting to me in 2006 with ECW rebrand. Unfortunately, I fell out of love of wrestling again because the 2006 ECW was a big pile of shit.
Well, it was fine for a few weeks.
It was. Well, no, hold on.
Fun.
The opening, the first episode had the Sandman versus the Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
That was terrible.
Okay.
But the rise of Punk and Lashley, and I honestly think ECW 06 reinvigorated the Big Show's career too.
It would have been fine if they hadn't called it ECW.
Yeah, wasn't it that early, like WWE, ECW, where they had Teddy Long and his new wrestler initiative?
Yes, and Graham, I'm looking at you because you know how much I love a segue.
I wondered what was going on there for a second.
ECW should not, ECW should not have been called ECW because that's not what it was. It was developmental.
It was NXT before NXT.
Exactly. And during that time, going into like 2008, 2009, 2010, and I'm checking my notes.
Miz got his real big break.
Yeah,
it's where Kofi Kingston got his first
exactly
taste of WWE.
In 2007, there was another thing developmental called FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, where once again Kofi Kingston, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, John Moxley, for those who pretend that WWE never existed. It did. All of these guys started out in FCW, and it was the new developmental territory. It was the new OVW. It was the new Deep South.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of post OVW guys. A lot of guys. I mean, Big E.
Lesnar.
Yeah.
No, Orton and Lebston were OVW.
Yeah.
Curtis Axel. I think Drew McIntyre went through that.
McIntyre, yeah.
Yep, McIntyre went through FCW.
The Usos.
Yep. And they all then hit the main roster, and things have been good so far with them. I think that all of these guys have had a pretty good career. I don't think any of the people we just mentioned have not won major championships.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's correct. Yeah.
and then WWE started doing something really, really fucking stupid, as they tend to do every couple of years. And that was the NXT reality show.
The game show, yeah.
I thought it was the stupidest thing. However, I mean, we got some good stuff out of it too. If nothing came out of the original NXT idea, we got Daniel Bryan, which was, you know, love or hate his WWE. I mean, if you hate Daniel Bryan's WWE run, you're dead inside. That was the feel good, you know, everything. The yes movement, even the heel turn, the heel Daniel Bryan.
Physical.
You know, the World
We
Heavyweight
saw-
Championship.
We saw it all come to a head at WrestleMania.
Yeah, the 27-second loss to Sheamus at WrestleMania, you know, leading up to that WrestleMania 30 with arguably the biggest match of his career. I'm sorry, two of the biggest matches of his career, where he wrestles Triple H. Once again, love him or hate him, he's a legend in this business.
One of the
And
best
then
weekends ever.
you go on to wrestle Batista and Randy Orton, two of the biggest names of the generation just before him, in one of the best WrestleMania main events. That match was phenomenal. It was such a good match. And the moment, like, I think all of us will always remember him holding up both titles with the confetti and the pyro and everything, because he wasn't supposed to be there.
No.
He was.
To put that in a bit of context, Ryan, put a little bit of context for you. On that night, he beat 36 world champions.
Yeah.
He beat all of Evolution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He didn't beat Ric Flair.
Well, I mean,
No.
Ric Flair beat himself.
Don't we know it?
But yeah, and I will never subscribe to the theory that was never meant to happen. I think that was WWE's plan all along.
I do not, because I think that Vince thought what Vince usually thinks, that if we bring back a former superstar who was big, everyone wants to see them win. You know, and that was the return of Blue Tista. Yeah. Everyone was like, oh yeah, Batista. Because, I mean, look what he did with Lesnar. We all knew Lesnar was going to be champion the moment he came back, which I think was around the same time. Lesnar came back.
2012.
Yeah, he came
Lesnar,
back for 31.
Rules. Yeah, he was back for Extreme Rules 2012, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then that led up to WrestleMania 31, his match with Roman.
With Seth cashing in. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. It was amazing. But what was really special that came out of the ashes of ECW, the ashes of FCW, and the train wreck that was NXT, the game show, was NXT. The true NXT, where Vince said, I'm so sick of dealing with developmental. Triple H, you're head of talent relations. You fucking figure it out. Send me the guys who are good. And NXT was born. And we had some transplants from FCW because Seth Rollins was still there. Roman was still there. Didn't see a lot from Ambrose, I don't think. I think he was I think they had sent him somewhere else for more training. And I think that's because he was a deathmatch guy and they didn't know how to fix him. Mm-hmm. I really think that's the end. Let me see. FCW. Yeah, the last. Oh, wow. Yeah, no, just looking through the names that actually did transition, there's actually quite a few. You know, but we had that really brief time where we had the FCW transplants in NXT. And it was good, you know, Rollins and Bo Dallas and all of them. And it was a lot of fun, but it was developmental. And then Triple H said, fuck it. I'm going to compete with my own father-in-law. Like, that's essentially what he decided to do. He wanted to compete, but it was still small. And that leads to 2012, WrestleMania 31. You know, all of the SCW guys are now main roster, and they're all going places. Rollins is about to win the world title. And Triple H says, hey, Vince, I'm going to run NXT. And Vince probably says, yeah, whatever, who cares? And that led to the biggest NXT event to date. It's almost their first takeover, but it ran at the San Jose State University athletic center. It was barely a gymnasium. And Triple H came out and talked about how it was their biggest show. There was less than 5,000 people there. But it was the genesis. It was the genesis of TakeOver. And I was there with someone you might know, Steel Trash Can.
Oh, wow.
And he wasn't really familiar. He was like, what's this NXT stuff like? What is it? I'm like, it's developmental.
How did
And
he
he's
get past
like-
the metal detectors?
I know, right? There weren't any. I mean, literally it was a gymnasium. And he didn't understand what it was. He didn't understand how rabid, because NXT fans back then were as rabid as ECW fans.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, I don't get it. It's just it's just trainees. And then a theme song hit. And 3 people came out. Carmella, Enzo, and Big Cass. And they did their bit, and the entire arena knew every single fucking word. And I remember him looking at me and went, holy shit, they're over. And I'm like, they are. What the fuck happened with that? But it was kind of the genesis. And we
This
had
is what happened with that.
well, Enzo went crazy. Big Cass disappeared,
crazy.
and Carmella is Carmella. I don't know. She's banging Corey Graves.
Mhm.
Marry him, isn't she?
Yeah, no, they're engaged. Good for them. I mean, can't be happy. But like, what do you like? I want your opinions. Like NXT changing from developmental to third brand to the black and gold to the alternative. Before there was AEW, before there was IWTV, the alternative to WWE was NXT.
Mhm.
And what thoughts, comments, suggestions?
Right. So when I was dragged kicking and screaming back into wrestling in 2016, my kind of gateway back into WWE was NXT. I didn't, and I still don't watch main roster WWE now. It is all about the only real WWE product I'll watch is NXT. That's what attracted me. That was the kind of like almost the indie version of what WWE put out. We're at a stage now where WWE are trying to hit every single demographic. Well, we're not now, but at that time we was. And NXT was the thing that attracted me, and it was the cool names in wrestling that I knew from the indie scene, but in a more kind of digestible style. Especially for someone like me on this side of the pond, where we don't really get to see a lot of these wrestlers in live shows. This was like my kind of opportunity to get into that indie scene, I suppose, in the States. So yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I still love it now, even though it's not the same thing. I still love the concept of what NXT is.
Graham?
Yeah, I loved.
I've never watched
it.
it.
Saying, like,
I've never watched it. What is an NXT?
NX who?
You were like I watched wrestling and like the Attitude Era, and then it was like I took a break, and I was like I came back in 2008, I think you said. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I knew Darren, you took like a similar break to what I did. Yeah, I came back I think 2016, something like that. So it was much later. I think when we discussed this, I think I started watching NXT in 2018. I think that's when I'd heard people talk about it. I'd heard everyone say how good it was as well, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure the reason why I didn't watch it. But I know once I watched that first takeover event from Louisiana, from New Orleans, I was hooked. That first show that we saw was like, oh my gosh. Like, I know you guys don't like Dave Meltzer, but I was like, that's a 5-star match. Like, straight away, as soon as we saw that North American title, the first one, I was like, that's a 5-star match, no problem at all.
Yeah.
And you watching the other ones, and they didn't quite live up to that, but they were still like, oh my gosh, these are really good matches. And then you get to that final match with Gargano and Ciampa, and I was like, oh, this is it. I'm totally in for NXT right now. And I think it's I kind of feel a little bit sad talking about NXT now, because it kind of, you've talked about it's a new generation, it's a new thing. It always used to be, the talk always used to be that the takeover shows were amazing and every single one of them was better than the previous one. And it did. It always felt like that. It was like, how do they keep doing this? How are they going to keep sustaining this? And they did. And I got to be honest, watching War Games at the weekend, it didn't grab my attention at all. I had to do other things. I had to put Jackson to bed. I haven't even watched highlights yet from it. I've seen little things on Twitter, but the matches I saw was like, they're okay, but it doesn't seem to be at that same level anymore. And I felt that for the last few. I don't think they've even called them takeovers anymore. For whatever.
No, takeover's retired now. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last one.
The last few NXT pay-per-views have just not felt as good, to be honest. There are people on NXT I love. I love LA Knight. He was one of those other people that I saw when I mentioned that Ugly Ducklings thing. Eli Drake was appearing because he's from Hagerstown, Maryland, and I was like, oh, that's like an hour and a half away. We'll go see. Mason got a picture with him with the Impact belt on, and it was like, that's a really big star, the Impact title holder. At like our third indie event, and I was a fan of him before that, and then just seeing what a cool guy he was. I'm a big fan of him. I know some people don't like him; they think he hams it up a little bit, but I think he's a great entertainer. He's somebody I enjoy watching. But yeah, I know you talked about some of those indie people, and obviously you know that I'm an indie fan as well, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel the same. I haven't gone back and watched the early ones. I know people say like, "Oh, you got to go back and watch." I think the only match I went back and watched was NXT Takeover Brooklyn, Sasha and Bailey. I think that's the only kind of classic one that I was like, okay, everyone's talked about this. I got to see what that's like. That's really kind of the only one I've ever gone back to watch. So my knowledge is really 2018 through 2021, I guess. But yeah, it's tailed off, unfortunately. I still think Gargano and Ciampa are just phenomenal. I know. Said, what would you show if you wanted to get people into wrestling? What 3 matches would you show them? And I said on a few times this, I would show them that series of 3 matches because you get the storytelling, you see the story build up, and just every single one of them 5-star matches as far as I'm concerned.
And I agree. I would make the argument, and I've made the argument a couple of times, and people don't seem to like this. And this is not because of promotion, and it has nothing to do with NXT, WWE, New Japan, AEW, TNA. It doesn't matter. I argue that if you think of the greatest professional wrestling of the last 25 years, and I'm talking Attitude Era, I'm talking WCW, WWF, AEW, New Japan, everything, everyone always says Kenny and Okada. They always say Kenny and Okada. I argue that Gargano and Ciampa surpass that just from storytelling. And the match psychology of it, that whole from heel turn all the way through everything that they did together over the span of 2 or 3 years. I think it was perfect long-term storytelling. It was so good. And the fact that they moved on from that, and Gargano and Ciampa, both of them transitioned into feuds with Adam Cole to put on just as good of a feud. I think that lends credence to that. I argue any day of the week that the 3 greatest professional wrestlers on the planet are Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, and Adam Cole. I firmly believe that. And this is nothing against Kenny Omega. I think Kenny Omega is a brilliant talent. I think he might go down as one of the greatest of all time. Mm-hmm. But in, the modern, especially now, I think that Omega has had some great feuds since he's become more full-time. You know, obviously AEW is very different than New Japan. New Japan was kind of a show here, a show there, a show here, a show there. Exactly. Coughgate. But the just the storytelling between Gargano and Ciampa, I think, was brilliant. And I think a lot of people fall into the same way you said, Graham. You go back, you see this feud between them, and you go, wow, you know, because NXT started with, I'd say the first big NXT feud that really made people care was Sammy and KO. But Gargano, you know, best friends fighting, you know, Gargano and Ciampa, because if you remember the heel turn, if you've seen the heel turn when Ciampa turned on Gargano, NXT did it perfectly. It's the end of the show, the beaten, bruised, they're sitting there at the top of the ramp. It even shows the NXT copyright logo. Like, this is the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay. But then that logo, while it's still on the screen, Ciampa just turns and beats the fuck out of Johnny. You never saw it coming. Even if you saw it coming, you didn't see it coming because WWE made you feel like, nope, this is the end. And I think that was the beauty of everything that they did together. I got very, very happy during War Games to see a DIY reunion. If nothing else on that card, seeing DIY together again is what made me happy. You know, it was just brilliant. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. Like I was telling Graham and Matt before Mags, before you showed up, I was lucky enough, I was honored enough to be at Ciampa's last indie show right before he signed full time with NXT, and his last match in XWA in Rhode Island was against fucking Cody Rhodes. And he jobbed
3 stars.
It was a phenomenal match, but the fact that he lost just shows you how much Cody Rhodes, you know, whatever Cody Rhodes. But the end, Tommaso Ciampa. This was post Cruiserweight Classic with him and Johnny. Tommaso Ciampa went around that entire, it was just a rec center. It was just, you know, small arena. He went around the ring. He shook every fan's hand, every single one of them, and said, thank you. Every single person in that building. If you were there, he shook your hand. And that shows me that Tommaso Ciampa is just as much of a class act as he seems to be. Mm-hmm. It was a brilliant show. It was amazing. Matt, your thoughts on, especially on the NXT transition from NXT to NXT Dose.0.
Well, before I do, I just want to come back a little bit, if that's all right, because
no, you'll answer the question set, and that's it.
I will do, but you've already chimed in about some people talk about Kenny and Kenny Okada, and you guys are waxing lyrical about Gargano and Ciampa. They're fine, but for me, you won't get any better than Mysterio and Guerrero.
I
don't remember seeing them in NXT though.
No.
But talking about the greatest match of all time.
yeah. For the storytelling they managed to do over a 10-year period.
I'm your puppy!
Some of the storylines sometimes were a bit wacky, but in the ring, they were so
There is nothing wacky about the Custody of Dominic ladder match.
Yeah.
Nothing wacky at all.
That's how all custody battles should be settled.
The weird thing is, if you take the fact of what they're going for out of the equation, it's a great ladder match.
It's an outstanding match.
Apart from the Vicky botch.
Where the fuck is Vicky?
Yeah.
That's my favorite audible I think I've ever heard in any wrestling.
But I go back from WCW, Halloween Havoc. I believe 97, correct?
96. I want to say it was 96.
The amazing match between Mysterio. Graham, are you reading a book on talking about WCW, Graham? Really?
Are you reading Mox's
You're always
book?
been very rude to people when they start to talk, so I thought I would just let you know how it feels. Okay.
I do it for comedic effect, Graham. There's a difference. Okay,
I like
you're
how
really doing a dick.
Graham claimed he's like, oh, we're doing video, yet he had multiple props ready to go.
It wasn't for that effect. Well, I knew you guys would be able to see it.
He
but it was
rubbed
more
his hands
so I could-
together when he said, "Oh, it's for video." Yeah.
Right. In any case, that's my personal opinion. Their ring work together is second to none in my personal opinion. NXT though,
It's cool to be wrong.
yeah, but to be fair, it's my personal opinion. NXT though,
Wrong
NXT 2.0 especially hasn't gone down. It's very divisive. I personally feel that a lot of it works with it and a lot of it don't. As proven by the fact of Graham didn't connect with the with War Games this past time. It's a very difficult thing to come to say one thing is better than the other because anyway, opinions are so subjective. I personally believe that one of the biggest mistakes was putting the NXT World Championship on Adam Cole.
Wrong.
At the time he was put on him.
The biggest mistake NXT did was competing with AEW. That was the biggest mistake. If they'd have stayed as the WWE indie brand and not gone head to head with AEW, Vince McMahon wouldn't have had his eyes on the product, and he wouldn't have got his fat little fingers stuck in it, and he wouldn't have said, "Right, you need to compete, goddammit, you need to beat this AEW." And then when it didn't happen, he turned it back into what NXT was originally meant to be, add developmental territory. If they'd have left it as that third cool brand, it would have still been awesome.
So I will argue that I was really confused with NXT 2.0, the first episode. And it's not because, like, everyone was shitting on the Dexter Loomis marriage, Dexter and Indy. A wrestling wedding is a rite of passage in any professional wrestling organization.
Mhm.
This is nothing new. This has been happening since forever.
Yeah.
This is a storyline that has been done a million times. And honestly, the Dexter and Indy wedding, I thought was one of the better ones. I thought it was very entertaining. It was a lot of fun.
Especially because he had an axe in his pocket.
And the fact that they haven't dropped the storyline. Dexter Loomis is one of the greatest characters in WWE history. I love the whole bit. It's funny. He's halfway serial killer, halfway clown, and I love it. Excuse me. That didn't bother me. It was the 90s Nickelodeon Studios vibe. It was the WCW Saturday Night at Universal Studios vibe. It was the studio taping format works, but I think they went a little too far. I don't like the plexiglass weird barricades. I don't like how circular the arena is. I really like the set. Like, I like the entry. I think that's a really cool entry, especially because it harkens back to like the MSG entry, that really tight corridor kind of thing. I really
love
like
that.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. The wrestling, even though we have transitioned to a 2.0, the next generation of NXT wrestling, these are all still very talented individuals, and they're doing a really, really great job. But they're also very fresh. They're still learning. I think that Braun Breaker is a legitimate future world champion. He's got the look, he's got the talent, he's the pedigree. He was born for this. He looks so much like his dad. He sounds so much like his uncle.
That is really weird. That is really, really
his
weird.
big bad booty nephew.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, and I think the way he's got that same thing that Rick had, where he looks like he's moving slow, but then his moves are so explosive and out of nowhere. And I think that as much as it would have been nice for the Black and Gold to get the win at War Games, I think that it was the right thing to do to have him get the pin, because he's their future star. He's their next, Roman Reigns. He's their next, Adam Cole. He's their next big thing in NXT.
Are you suggesting that they maybe have learned from Cena going over the Nexus at SummerSlam?
Yes, I am. But what I want, my main point is, yes, we are seeing the next generation, and this is very similar to what we were seeing, because everyone seems to think that the original NXT was all indie darlings, and it wasn't. There were a couple, Seth Rollins, for example, he was an indie darling, but Roman wasn't. Roman was a homegrown talent.
Came from football, didn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Came from football.
He played. I think he played for the same team that Lesnar did.
Graham had this on MGB in Wrestler or American Footballer, I believe, and Roman, I believed, was the Falcons. Yeah,
The Vikings.
So same thing.
Yeah. Either way, he was I know he's a pro football player, or at least almost a pro football player. But like Bo Dallas, homegrown talent. There were a lot of indie folks that showed up in NXT, but most of them, Paige, obviously, she was unknown outside of the US, entirely unknown. She was very much a kind of a homegrown talent. Sasha Banks, big in New England, not big anywhere else.
I need to correct you. Paige was well known in the UK.
That's why I said well known outside of the UK. She was not well known.
You said US.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I meant to say outside of the UK. Apologies.
Okay. It's all good. It's all good.
Apologies.
We know geography is not the strength of Americans, so I let it slide.
No. I know that England is roughly the size of Mississippi.
That's about right.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
So, now we're just doing the same thing over and over again. They're still going to pull in some independent stars. This is, everyone's like, nope, they're only doing homegrown PC talent now. No, that's just what people are reporting. But I guarantee that's not going to be the case. If they see a star in someone, they're going to pull them in. It's going to happen.
As proven with the announcement this afternoon about Jay White signing at the Performance Center. I'm joking. I couldn't resist.
See, that's what gets me to stop watching NXT.
It's been a year. You've got to at least give us an update on Jay White.
He's a bag of dicks.
All right, that's all we needed.
The
obligatory mention.
He's even sometimes been considered a satchel of penises. But
or a book bag of knobs.
Yeah. He's just and honestly, as much as I'm just not a fan of Jay White, he wouldn't have been a bad fit in NXT. He wouldn't have, because then we could have watched Tommaso Ciampa beat the shit out of him.
We saw him get his ass kicked at MSG, Graham.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Super Card of Honor.
Would that work too?
Hun?
Yeah.
Fanny pack of phalluses. Would that work as well?
That's very good. Very good. Very good.
Did you just call him a fanny pack?
Of
phalluses. A fanny pack of phalluses,
okay. Yeah. Because fanny means something very different where you're from.
It does.
Which I think is hysterical.
It's always, it will never not be funny, that word.
Yeah. Especially because the kind of people you see wearing fanny packs, it's extra funny. Mick Foley, big fan of fanny packs. He apologized for it.
I think Matt's got a fanny pack. I bet you got a bum bag, Matt.
I do not.
Wow, I'm actually shocked at that. You look like someone who would wear a bum bag.
Okay, so in January when he's walking around Disney that he's gonna.
I have my Disney
wearing
backpack.
One of those. Chris, I know you're in the background because we can hear you. Make sure you get a picture of him with his fanny pack, please.
I have a backpack on. I wear it all the time. I'm resort dad.
But anyways, this is just what NXT was supposed to be initially. It started as developmental, it grew into something different, and just like WWE evolves, just like AEW will eventually evolve, just like TNA has evolved, just like Ring of Honor has evolved, NXT will evolve again. It's going back to developmental, and it will slowly morph again. We're just looking at something different. WWE in general likes to change every couple of years. They change their format. Like something, I don't know if you've noticed, NXT as it is now is a little more
Edgy.
edgy. It's a little more adult oriented. There's a little more cursing on it. There's the ladder match between
A lot of
Gargano and
smoking weed on it.
yeah, well, MSK, I mean, obviously. There's the ladder match between Gargano and Braun, when Gargano's doing his multiple super kicks and Braun gives him a how about this? I didn't see that coming because a shit here, asshole there, that makes sense. But WWE, ever since the PG era, has been very careful about the middle finger. They've always tried to cut away from it, or edit it out of other broadcasts and stuff like that. Like we had Kofi and we had Orton when he, dropped off the apron. But even then, they moved the camera so you couldn't see his hands.
Remember Kofi doing it to Samoa Joe? wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that, and that was such a great moment, but they never show it again. But they've been a little more open to the cursing, and they're trying to do more adult oriented storylines with NXT, but also stay kind of fun and free. And you can definitely feel Vince McMahon. You can feel Vince, and you can feel Kevin Dunn, and you can feel these guys. But you still can feel that heart and soul of NXT. It's still there. The spark is still there. The fire's not out yet. It's just been extinguished, but the coals are still there. They're still hot and they're still burning. And eventually that flame will erupt again. And I firmly believe that. And I agree with what Graham said. The last couple of takeovers, they've still been fantastic shows, but they haven't been
Graham said they sucked.
I said they were
Graham said they absolutely sucked.
I said
There's
they've gone
been-
downhill.
There's
He
been
wasn't
good
listening.
storytelling. There's been good wrestling, and that's what I'm looking for. At the end of the day, if you can have a wrestling match that invokes an emotion from me, I don't really care what your stage looks like. I don't really care who's in the ring. As long as at the end of that match, I felt something, that's all that matters. And that's the issue with main roster WWE. And that's the issue I take with AEW a lot of the times. I don't feel anything. The matches are great, but I don't feel anything. I don't feel like the last match for AEW, I felt something, was Kingston and Punk. They told a story. It was a fight, and I really appreciated the way that story is, mainly because I think Eddie Kingston is the man who should have never been. He was the guy who should have never been on such a big stage like that, but he was the guy who always deserved to be on a big stage like that because he's busted his ass for upwards of 20 years. He deserved it. He absolutely he deserves to be AEW champion. He deserves to be every champion. He deserves it because he was a guy that was never ever going to be there, but now he is, and all because he went out on ICW, no holds barred, little deathmatch show. It was behind someone's house in New Jersey. And he went out there and he grabbed a mic and said, "Cody Rhodes, I want to fight you." All because he shot his shot. He is now in a situation where he's good. He's got a career that he can now live off of. Not bingo halls, not a hot dog and a handshake. He can live now. He has money. He can support his family. And that's what it's all about. And that's why whenever someone signs with WWE and someone shits on them, "Oh, I can't believe they signed with WWE." WWE is going to feed their kids. WWE is going to put their kids through college. WWE is going to buy them a house.
Yeah.
Because if you can just stick with WWE for a couple of years, like everyone, oh, Ziggler, they never use him right, and he's always a jobber. Ziggler makes
He'll
like,
put you over.
yeah, he puts people over. He's a veteran. He's also making like 1.8 a year or something like that.
And
And-
gets to his own comedy.
And
Yeah.
does things outside of WWE.
Yeah. He
He's
does
got
his,
an
his
easy
stage
laugh.
show. He does his comedy. He does, but you know what? If he gets married, I don't know if he's married or not. I don't know if he has kids or something. His kids are set for life.
Mhm.
You know, and that's what people say. Like, oh, he just sits at catering. He should go to AEW. No offense, but what? He should go to AEW so he also sits at catering because they've got an overbloated roster.
Don't get me started there.
You know, it's. I love AEW. I love professional wrestling. I love AEW.
Yeah.
I love WWE. I love NXT. I love all of it. It's great. But like, if Kyle O'Reilly, if he leaves, if Johnny leaves, if Ciampa leaves, everyone's like, oh, they should go to NXT or they should go to AEW. No, they shouldn't. Look at what happened to a lot of guys. Yeah, you remember how oh God, who was it?
You got Strowman, you got Wyatt, you got all these people who have left as last year, for example. They've
oh,
gone
fuck,
to
no.
indie stuff.
Andrade.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so happy Andrade's going to be in AEW now. He's going to shine. He barely wrestles, and honestly,
And
he's
he
still
jobs to
not.
Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, and he's still not nearly as good as he was in NXT. Not
Mhm.
even close to the level he was on. Who cares? You know?
Mhm.
How many matches has Ruby had?
I mean,
3?
More than Punk.
No, to be fair, Ruby has had she's in the middle of that TBS title
She
tournament,
is.
and
She's in the final.
and
Yeah.
she's kicking ass.
You
And
You
she
know,
looks
but
happy.
like
The
you
thing
had
is, she looks happy there as well.
you had 3
Yeah.
debuts in one show. You had Ruby, you had Debray, and you had Adam Cole.
And we knew all about them. We knew about every single one of them.
See, here's the fun thing. I did not because leading into it was Full Gear, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leading into Full Gear, I went media dark. I wanted to know nothing because I knew that this is the kind of shit. Since they only do 4 pay-per-views a year, or 5, 4,
Five.
5.
Yeah.
I know they always plan something special, so I didn't want to know. So I purposely, about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before Full Gear, I pretty much muted everything AEW related on Twitter. I stopped using Twitter almost entirely. I didn't want to know. So I had no idea. I had no idea that any of them were coming. But at the beginning of the show, I went into the other room because we were talking about debuts. We always discuss like, oh, who do you think might show up tonight? I went to the other room. I grabbed a marker and I grabbed a piece of mail and I wrote Ruby Riott, Adam Cole, Daniel Bryan. Those are my predictions. So Ruby Riott shows up and I'm just like, cool. And then Adam Cole shows up and I'm like, Adam was first, right? Yeah, Adam was first.
Mhm.
I went into the kitchen, I grabbed it, and I said, told you. And my buddy and my girlfriend both went, yeah, no Daniel Bryan, though. Flight of the Valkyrie hits, and they all look at me and go, how the fuck did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I had a because I knew he was gone. And I knew Adam Cole's contract was up, but at the last time I'd watched NXT, Adam Cole was still there because that was only a week difference. He was on NXT 1 week and AEW the next.
I think it was the same week, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was on Wednesday nights NXT
Wednesday,
and then
he was in
Saturday night.
AEW. Yeah.
And that was great. That was fantastic. But there's too many people, and NXT was suffering from the same thing. There were a lot of people, and I think that's why a lot of people were like, my contract's up, I'm going to leave. And they all left on good terms. Notice that nobody who's, between, Cole and Debray and, potentially Johnny and KO or KOR and Bobby Fish, notice none of them said, fuck you, WWE.
Mhm.
They all pretty much just said, we had a great time. we had a really fantastic run, and it was a lot of fun, and we met a lot of people, and we had a lot of great matches.
When
was
you
it.
leave on your own terms, though, that's the kicker. When you are released, it's very much fuck you, WWE.
Yeah. But even a lot of the releasees were like, thank you for my time. You know, you taught me a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
to turn it around slightly the other way, one day, and it will happen one day, when AEW start releasing people like Vince has done, and it will happen one day,
Mhm.
because end of the day, there's so much of his own money he can put into this project.
I've said it since day one, since before AEW was even a weekly program. Billionaires do not throw money down black holes. He will want this company to turn a profit, and when it
Exactly.
doesn't, he will start culling the fat.
Indeed.
And they're still in the red. They are massively in the red because
10 figures. They said 10 figures in the red.
They are dumping a lot of money into their game development. They're dumping a lot of money into their outside projects. They're dumping a lot of money into a lot of things, and they're not seeing a profit. Yeah, their gates are great. Their gates are fantastic. They're selling out every single show they do, and that's fantastic. Their pay-per-view buy rates are high, but they're still not WWE numbers high.
And they've got huge contracts as well, because it's the money place to go now.
It does sound very much like when Hogan, Hall, and Nash were, and people were sitting with Time Warner contracts, and if they wanted to, they could sit at home and be paid with a guaranteed contract. I'm guaranteed. I'm guessing they got most of the people who've signed AEW have got guaranteed contracts.
And that's the thing too, is like I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, Adam Cole, they must have offered him a ton of money. I don't think that's the case. It's an opportunity to work with his best friends and his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't he take that? You know, because Vince offered him allegedly $1 million a year to stick around, and he declined because he wanted to work with Britt, and he wanted to work with Matt and Nick, and he wanted to be able to do his Twitch streaming. Those were the three things. It had nothing to do with money for Adam Cole. Adam Cole doesn't need a big money contract because Adam Cole has money.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, he's good. He's set.
It was to do with the creativity.
Yeah. But even then, it's like he hasn't done a ton, but he does a ton behind the scenes. He does all the AEW game stuff with them. He does all of that, and he still wrestles, but it's not like he was wrestling, and he doesn't have a long-term feud yet. He's only been there for what, a month? Yeah, about a month now.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, to what you said, there will be a point where they have to, or maybe Mags, I don't know. When do you say you have to trim the fat eventually? Yeah, you have to trim the fat.
Yeah.
And I think one of my kind of issues now with AEW is it's so top heavy. Everybody who comes in is someone who you would expect to be a huge name, and it always reminds me of something that I remember hearing Jim Cornette say, that when he's asked who he would pick for his if he was to start up a new wrestling promotion, people are shocked when he doesn't go for huge names, because he says you need people who can lose week in, week out, and it doesn't affect them. In AEW now, they have so many huge names that top end of around the titles is so clustered that when someone like CM Punk comes in, or Daniel Bryan, or Adam Cole, or even Miro when he come in, you instantly expected them to be at the top of the tree. And when it didn't happen, it feels like a letdown. It feels like, oh, well, they may as well have stayed in WWE where they were at least pushed a little bit.
To move on to that, think, Meg, like Sean Spears went to AEW because he wasn't getting. For example, let's say an example.
If there's anybody I would love to fail in AEW, it's fucking Sean Spears, because of the way he was such a dickbag when he left WWE.
But
I'm leaving there to become a big star. I'm going to be a big star in AEW.
But here's the thing: it wasn't WWE, and it's not AEW. It's Sean Spears that's a problem, because he's already been outspokenly critical about his position at AEW. He's like, they said I would be this, and I'm barely on TV. He's made plenty of jokes on Twitter about how much time he spends at catering. You know, it's like he's just a miserable prick who's married to fucking Peyton Royce. How can you be miserable?
No,
Like,
I mean, I get that, and I like I said, I would love for him to fail and fall on his ass, but he has a point. When he was brought in, he was the new shiny. Oh yes, Sean, you're going to be the big star, and then WWE released someone else, and it's that's interesting. Let's bring them in, and then the next person gets pushed to the bottom of the list.
It's literally the meme of the guy who's got this really hot girlfriend and looks over his shoulder at a new hot girlfriend.
Yeah.
How many undefeated streaks are there in AEW? There's a lot. There's a lot of people who are undefeated.
Well,
and that's
one of them was broken this past week with the Gun Club losing their first ever match in AEW.
Not surprised of what's happened with Will Austin Gunn recently.
36-1 now, apparently.
You know, but it's like you don't need everyone to be undefeated. Miro was undefeated for a long time. You know, Punk's undefeated. You know, it's better when you have someone lose quickly. They don't even have to lose clean, but just get them pinned.
And on that note, that was one of my biggest problems with NXT back in the day. Actually. Because Graham's touched this many, many times, actually. If you watch a TakeOver, guaranteed you weren't going to get a 5-minute match. You're going to get 25 minutes, 30 minutes. So many false finishes. You knew it wasn't going to be over if you went for a pinfall in the first 2 or 3 minutes. You know that surprise factor. You knew it was going to be a long match because they had to fill out the 3-hour card.
Yep.
That was one. It's hard for me to criticize back when NXT was literally one of the best things going, and everyone would hype it. But that was a big problem because you couldn't get invested in the early part of a match because you knew that there was no element of danger there of losing.
But I think it was to me personally, I like those kind of matches. I like the matches that build and build and build.
I'm fine with that, but when they go for pinfall at the beginning, you know they're not going to happen, so you don't believe they know ball flow. No point checking out for that one. There's no surprise factor with the pinfall attempt.
That's once again go back to the beauty of Gargano and Ciampa. Those false finishes didn't start until the end. They usually didn't try to pin each other early on. They went at it. But I feel like AEW, maybe you guys can, if your minds remember, I feel like they do that where it's the same thing. You expect the matches to run long. You know the matches are going to run long, but someone still goes for the pinfall. Or Punk and Kingston, I think he went for the GTS as the first move. You know, we all knew this wasn't going to end at the beginning. You know, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, he kicked out." And it's like, well, of course he did. They're not going to build up to Punk versus Kingston and have it end immediately. It's not going to be a squash.
Can you imagine the backlash they'd get if they did that? If they built up this story of Punk versus Kingston, or what they're building up now, Punk versus MJF, and then it was over in 4 minutes, the fans would lose their shit.
Yeah, but look at the backlash at Becky and Bianca. Like, I didn't like. Did Bianca deserve to lose that way? No. Did it work from a storyline perspective? Absolutely. She wasn't prepared for the match, and she got blindsided. She literally took a punch, and before she could even recover, she was getting hit by the manhandle, and she was done. Like, that made sense as a squash. It perfectly made sense. Was it the right move? Maybe not. But it was not a bad squash.
A storyline, it worked.
Absolutely did.
And in terms of star power, it made all the sense in the world as well.
Yeah, Becky Lynch is the man. She's multi-time. She's Becky 2 belts. You know, she's main event. She's won the main event of WrestleMania. She was the first.
She's now big time Becky.
Yeah, she was the first. Becky. She was one of the first women ever to main event WrestleMania. Right? Yeah, because it was the three of them. Yeah. It was her, Ronda, and Charlotte.
Which I still don't believe would have been main event if it wasn't for Ronda.
No, it wasn't, which is bullshit because Ronda shouldn't have been there in the first place. But
well, agree to disagree.
Can I add something about Ruby? Because you were talking about like
Yes,
she hasn't had many matches
absolutely.
or whatever. Matt talked about the girlfriend meme, the hot new girlfriend or whatever. One of the big things that I do like that AEW does that WWE doesn't, like they put so many restrictions on. Like they keep telling people, you're not doing cameos, you're not doing your extra things that
Yeah.
you want to do. They're so restrictive on this. You don't even have your own promos. They're going to tell you exactly what you're going to say. Like you can understand why people would want to move to a company
Sure.
that's more forward thinking with this. Like you get a chance to show your character, you get the chance to talk about how your character works. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see it or not yet, so this might be a bit of a spoiler. So I'll just talk about who the match was. She's back on the indies as well.
Yep.
So obviously a lot of these wrestlers, they're not just having one match a week, possibly not even featuring for months at a time. They can appear on the different AEW shows and they can build their record up as they face those new indie talents coming in, and then they can, etc., etc. She faced on Sunday in your neck of the woods, Ryan, at hashtag Fate Forever, I believe. She fought for, it was Alex Shelley's second defense of the IWTV title against Ruby Riott. And I'm not going to say anything about the match, except for the reaction to Ruby Soho being in the ring was absolutely phenomenal. You obviously well familiar with Beyond and the atmosphere with those crowds. And I don't think that I've seen a reaction to a wrestler coming into the ring as big as the reaction to Ruby Soho. Whereas
Heidi
I don't remember how many
Lovelace.
matches she lost in a row, but they had a streak where they lost, I think, every single match for like 6 or 7 months in a row. And now suddenly you move to another company and you're the hottest thing there. And when you come back on the indies, everybody loves you. You can really see why people would want to make that shift, sometimes for less money as well.
I totally understand. Yeah, and that reaction, a lot of that comes from she had wrestled for Beyond before, and she was before WWE. So she was the one thing I will always say about Beyond Wrestling fans is they are a very rabid fan base, and if they like you, you're over. If they don't, you won't see them again. You know, that's just how the promotion is booked. You know, they don't book people who don't get a reaction from the crowd. And Beyond fans, I mean, I joke about this personally. I've always felt like Beyond is a promotion that was built to allow Chris Dickinson to wrestle big names, because he's wrestled so many big names in Beyond. You know, when someone comes in, I feel like the conversation is, oh, we're bringing just to go back a number of years, we're bringing Samoa Joe in. Oh, who's he wrestling? Oh, obviously he's wrestling Chris. You know,
I could be a real dick and say this is the reason why AEW exists in the first place, so Cody can fight people who mean something.
That's
wouldn't,
harsh. That is harsh.
Wouldn't necessarily disagree with you.
Everyone's debut was against Cody, that's all I'm saying.
Everybody loses to Cody in their first feud. That is very true.
Mm-hmm. And I think it is an issue at times. My biggest issue with that is who did he wrestle on Dynamite? He wrestled someone on Dynamite, and I'm trying to think who it was. It was a couple of weeks ago. I forget what it was.
Malachi Black.
Was it the? I don't think it was that match.
Do you mean the match against Andrade where he put himself through a table and set himself on fire and still got the pin?
Yeah, that one. That was a very poorly done spot, and was clearly done by someone who's never done a flaming table before.
I mean, you could see the fire gel on his back for the whole of the match. It was clear there was going to be
and that was the problem, because that's what made the table stick to him, which is what caused the burns.
Mm-hmm.
That was a horrible. Honestly, if you're going to do fire, just do fire. It goes out very quick. Ask Mick Foley.
And Edge.
And Edge. But I forget who he was wrestling, but it was a random Dynamite. It was just a random Dynamite. And he had his whole like superhero pay-per-view entrance.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
the Homelander stuff.
Finn Balor doesn't do the demon on Finn Balor doesn't do the demon on, you know, random SmackDown. You know, like that's just not the way it works. You save those entrances. Triple H doesn't do a motorcycle on Raw. You know, like friggin' most people don't have, a musical act show up to play their entrance on a random NXT.
No.
That's pay-per-view stuff. That's what you do on pay-per-views. And Cody has this big elaborate entrance every time, and it's
through the
weird.
middle of the entrance ramp as well.
He's the only person who comes out the middle. That's what bothers me. I have said this before, and I will say it again. I guarantee sitting down and having a conversation that the man, Cody Runnels, I have nothing against this individual. I think I could probably have a lot of fantastic conversations about professional wrestling with him, and I think I would enjoy every moment of it, because I'm not saying that I think he is a bad person. Cody Rhodes is a little egotistical.
Mhm.
And that's just where I stand on it. And
Ryan, he's a little egotistical in the same way I'm a little gay.
you're very gay, though.
So Cody's very egotistical. That's the point he's making.
All right, so after 1 hour and almost 40 minutes, we have decided that Cody Rhodes is just as egotistical as Matt Tighty Whitey Willis is gay.
And that's very.
And on that note, Graham, Matt, Mags, that's it. We did it. I recorded an episode of The Blade Job in the year of 2021. And I think at the beginning, Graham, you said, and Mags, you all said that this is a shell of its former self. No rants, not going way over time. And I think I managed to do all of those things.
You got the
I
Jay
went
White reference in as well. The only
way
thing that was
over
missing
time.
that's traditional from the Blade Job is there was no reference to the 7 at all. Now, admittedly, most of us are actually already in the recording studio right now, but
It's true. It's very true. But there will be a very... Sorry, I have the FCW page pulled up, and I thought it was a sexy photo. It's actually just Wade Barrett in trunks.
Oh, let me
It looks
pull
like
that
he's
up.
got his hand on. He's like, it's very strange. Yeah. But on that note, you can follow me at Nishguy on the Twitterverse. That's one thing we haven't done. Everyone, let's go clockwise.
you pointed. Oh no, you did point clockwise. Yes, you're good.
Look
You can
at
follow
that,
me
the-
at
the
MGB.
ma-
The
Graham.
mathematician got his geometry
Getting the
wrong.
clock wrong.
You can follow me at MGB Graham, but probably I don't really tweet much from there. It's more indie stuff from there. Most of my fun stuff is probably at Good Bad Wrestle. Matt's not in charge. Matt doesn't have any access to that.
Not
That's just
allowed
me.
it. No, not allowed it.
So what are the names of your podcasts?
Me? Oh,
Yeah.
MGB Wrestling Podcast and Good Cop, Bad Cop Wrestling Podcast, which I don't even really need to do anymore. I did that because Matt didn't have a podcast to begin with, so it was his avenue back into podcasting, and now he has so many. There's no even really reason for doing it anymore, to be honest. But
Except that every now and then I show up.
you do. You put it. Actually, you've appeared on more other podcasts this year than you appeared on your own podcast. So you appeared on Good Cop, Bad Cop, and you have your seasonal appearance on the MGB Wrestling Podcast.
I'll
well.
never
the
miss
only
that.
person besides our family to appear on every single season so far. Much to
means I'm
Matt's chagrin.
I must be related now. So I'll be over for Christmas.
You're the
Yeah,
son
I think
he
I added
never
you into my
wanted.
will now since you've appeared on so many episodes.
It's true.
You
All
get
right.
a collection of Cody Rhodes t-shirts.
Mags.
So you can follow me, assuming the video comes out down here even at Podfather Mags. I'm on way too many podcasts. I'm not going to list them all here. But the good ones are Chain Wrestling.
All the ones that don't get mentioned now are going to be like they're going to be crushed.
Well, I make the ones that aren't going to get mentioned, so I'll only be disappointed myself. But yeah, check out Chain Wrestling, check out A Change in Attitude. Everything we're doing over at Radio Tech is absolutely amazing. But I do want to say thank you for doing this again. Make sure that this happens more regularly, because even though we mock you for it being a shell of a show, we still fucking love the Blade Show. We love you.
Yep.
shout out to all the #the7. You guys are absolutely amazing, and yeah, we wouldn't be in the position we are if it weren't for you guys. So we want more Blade Job for 2022.
Maybe next year I'll do 2.
No, weekly, back to weekly, motherfucker.
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I don't think at Rain Counter, I'm never quite sure how I'm supposed to address him. He's going to be very impressed that he's just come back after hiatus and he didn't get a mention on one of the good podcasts.
He doesn't need to get a mention. Do you know why? Because everybody loves him. When he came back, it was like, oh my God, Paul's back. Oh, and Mags is there.
You know what the funny thing is? I didn't even know he left.
I ate a fucking stock cube because of him.
He only eats half, and you ate a whole one, so you only got yourself. It was
horrific, honestly, Graham. Never do that. Never, if you get the food challenge,
you don't
never
need to
do
tell
that.
me that. That's obvious. No one eats a whole stock cube.
Oh, Matt, you're here. How have you been, Matt?
I'm good. I've eaten a whole stock cube before. It's fine.
It's not fine. I've literally got kidney damage. Literally.
You're kidding me. Right. That's terrible. That's terrible, even for my standards.
You don't get to give your socials for that horrific joke.
Fine. Yeah. It's there anyway. It's fine.
Matt, Tidy Whitey Willis.
Well, I just want to bask in my magnificence. Why don't you just hit me up over at Matt.UK? You can also find me with Graham, mostly on Good Cop, Bad Cop. And you can find me over with Mag on Techers.
Yes.
It's true. It's the only live broadcast I usually ever find myself in. And even
sorry for that. I am so sorry for that.
Even when you don't hear, you usually tend to do it live while I'm at work. So I don't have a lot of time to comment, but a lot of times I pull it up and I go, what the hell are they talking about? And I listen to it in the background.
We don't even know.
Every Monday at 6 o'clock Eastern, we've got the volley on, so you can tune to that. It's fine. Yeah,
and that's usually when I'm starting to wrap up my day. So you're the soundtrack to me not having to work anymore. You're the go home show to you're the go home show to a WCW pay-per-view in 2001.
to sold out.
Yep.
NWO sold out.
Yep. So that's it. That's it for this. There might even be a little edits. I don't know. This did go long, but I hope you enjoyed it. Follow these guys. They do more than I do. I just show up every now and then and say some funny shit. Not funny shit. But it's been wonderful. Say goodnight, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
We're out of here.